I'm Ellen Cassedy. I'm the author of a book called We Are Here, Memories of the Lithuanian Holocaust. Years ago, when I was a child, Lithuania seemed like a land that existed in another dimension. It was the place where my Jewish forebears were from, but I couldn't imagine ever coming in contact with this place. But then somehow I found myself taking a journey that really changed my life. I learned that Vilna, or Vilnius as it is today, the capital of Lithuania, was once a thriving center of Jewish life. It was known as the Jerusalem of the North. In World War II, the Jews of Lithuania were murdered with a thoroughness and swiftness that was unusual even for that terrible time. It was the German invaders who gave the orders, but for the most part it was actually Lithuanians who pulled the triggers, and hundreds of thousands of Jews died. Then Lithuania became part of the Soviet Union, and for many decades, the history of this terrible genocide was buried. But then, in the 1990s, people began to talk finally about the history of the genocide and also about the thriving Jewish community that came before. And questions began to bubble up. And when I went to Lithuania at the turn of the 21st century, I found people who were just bubbling over with questions. I ended up taking a book tour of Lithuania and talking with young Lithuanians, teenagers, who plied me with really earnest, interesting questions. And when I showed a list of those questions to Jessica Krash, she began to think, this sounds musical to me. This sounds like poetry. This sounds like the lyrics to a musical piece.
I like music that wrestles, and so I was taken with the questions of these Lithuanian teens because they're wrestling. They're wrestling with the history of their country. They're wrestling with how they can become good people. I went to Lithuania for the first time last summer. My grandfather was from there, but he never talked to me about it. And as my plane came in and I saw Vilnius for the first time, I wondered if I was returning to somewhere. Was I returning somewhere that I belonged? And then as I walked the streets of Vilnius, I wondered, did I belong here? And I had started the song before I went to Vilnius, so it was very interesting then to be there and actually walk the streets and see, how do I feel?
And she looked through these earnest, modest, humble questions of teenagers and created a piece that I think really gets to the core of what some Lithuanians are beginning to ask themselves. What happened? What would I have done had I lived at that time? What do we do with a terrible history of genocide? Can we honor the past and honor our dead without perpetuating the fears and hatreds of the past? And when we listen to this piece, I think those questions really come to life in a very moving, deep, and sacred way. For me, this piece really brings out the kind of moving changes that are happening in a country scarred by genocide. And I think these are questions that matter not only for people in the small country of Lithuania, but really for all of us, for all people who want to play a part in making sure that something like this never happens again.